Margot Robbie, Greta Gerwig, welcome to 7:30.
Thank you, Sarah.
Margot, I'll start with you because this is your project. You started this. Now, when you went to see The Toy Maker in 2018, so it's a few years ago, what was driving you then?
I thought it was a big and exciting opportunity. The word Barbie is just already globally recognized. And people feel really strongly about Barbie. Some people love Barbie. Some people have a lot of problems with Barbie, but everyone has an associated memory with Barbie, whether they kind of felt ambivalent or indifferent about her, they still remember her. She was kind of omnipresent, I think, in nearly everyone's childhood. And that's just kind of an interesting place to start off with an audience.
And what about that love, hate, makes people angry, makes people love? Was that in your mind at the beginning, or was it just that it was such a powerful global image?
It just felt like we could ignite something with it. It just felt like it seems like over the last 64 years, it hasn't taken much for Barbie to ignite conversation or sometimes, revolutions or protests. It's very, I don't know, there's something about Barbie that just always kind of blows things up. And I just thought we could do something exciting with it if we paired it with the right person.
The big thing is the fact that you're both here, and the thing was about the choice. Who was going to write it in the first instance? Because you weren't the director at first, were you?
No.
So why did you choose Greta Gerwig?
Well, I really wanted to work with Greta. Love her as
Why did you choose me?
Because I love you and you know it. No, I had seen, as soon as I saw Lady Bird, I think I tried to get a meeting with Greta. I really wanted to work with her. I was trying to find a project to do with her. So we met and we talked, and I was prepared to be intimidated by this smart indie director. I'd seen the movies that she's acted in, all very cool, quirky, highbrow. I just thought, I'm just I hope she doesn't think I'm, not cool. But as soon as we spoke, I was like, my God, I feel like we're best friends. She's so warm and inviting and very smart without making you feel stupid, and very funny without making you feel boring, and charming and enthusiastic and all these things that I thought, that's just someone I want to be around. Anyways, other projects didn't work out. She went on, she was prepping Little Women, went on to do that. Another movie that I absolutely adore, just kind of reinforced my belief that she is one of the great directors of our generation.
What is it about her? What is it then about her writing skill that you wanted to bring into Barbie?
I think it's very evident in her work that she that she's very, very intelligent. That comes across in her.
I'm so sorry, we're still
No,
talking about
I'm
you.
like,
This is very
oh,
strange.
God.
I apologise. Okay. Just seem
No,
natural.
carry on.
No. She's very intelligent. You can feel that in how her scripts and stories and characters are constructed, and how they kind of come at you and it still feels real. It doesn't feel heady, but you can tell there's a lot of thought behind it, and there's a lot of heart, most importantly, and the humor is there, and the humor lands, and that's already that's a hat trick that's hard to pull off already. But for me, she just does that just so exquisitely, and then on top of that, it's constructed in a well-made film. It's just, you can tell that everything had intention behind it, and it's just a real film. It's a real filmmaker making the choices that great filmmakers choose. And I getting to know Greta, know how much she respects and honors the legacy of film that's come before her, and filmmaking techniques in particular. But at the same time, you can speak to her for 5 minutes and know that she just has her finger on the pulse of where society is at today. And that's exactly what we needed for Barbie, someone who would be able to honor the legacy and also have a culturally relevant conversation with where we're at today.
Greta Gerwig, it's not just auteur does Barbie, obviously, but when the idea came along at first, what was do you remember your very first response? Notwithstanding that it's Margot Robbie and you already like her and you know she's clever and her production company is doing really interesting things, especially for women. But as the concept Barbie, do you recall?
Well, it's actually funny because today I find myself in very similar circumstances than I found myself when we initially started talking about it, which is that I was in post on Little Women and I had an infant. I had just given birth. So I think I was in the kind of postpartum delirium where to reconstruct your mindset later is a little bit difficult in a certain way, but I think it's essentially what Margot was describing. There felt something sparky about it that I couldn't quite put my finger on, and I wasn't sure how it would all fit together, and I was sleep deprived, but I thought, oh, really truly the only way I can describe it is it feels like some part of me is leaning towards the idea. And that's what you sort of go with, and that's true whether like with things I've written just from nothing, and also things I've written with like Little Women that had some sense of a source material, some source material. It's like it's like a physical sense of like I'm leaning into it, and I think I felt that around it, and but I didn't know, and it wasn't really until after we'd written the script that I thought. I just had that feeling of like, now I can't bear to let anyone else direct it.
So that then had to be. I think you said at the beginning you were also terrified. You thought that it could be a career killer. What in the Barbie story were you afraid of?
Well, number one, that there wasn't a story, and just that. All of that feeling that Margot was talking about of people like loving it, hating it, not, just all of that kind of emotion directed around it. That felt both like there's story in that, and it felt terrifying because it felt like, oh, you can really, there's a lot of places you could put a foot wrong and then you'd be off on a terrible tangent. So, but I think that. Yeah, but that's also what made it kind of intriguing was all of that sparkiness.
Now, of course, you were never going to make a hagiography. Either of you were not going to do that. But how were you, Margot, able to persuade Mattel that you could make something sharp, clever, funny, caustic, something that makes conversations happen while still respecting their property, their product?
I guess it was just step by step, The first step was to say we're the production company to do this, and, we assure you we want to honour the brand, but we have to be upfront and let you know that we're not going to shy away from the problematic parts of this. Otherwise, it's not a movie we're interested in making, but it will come from a place of love. It will come from a place of respect, because I absolutely have respect for anyone that can make a toy sustain popularity for 60-something years. That's incredible. And tons of people, there's thousands of employees and people who've poured their lives into Barbie and the brand. I would never want to do them a disservice. And there's tons of fans out there, who love Barbie. I wouldn't want to do them a disservice either. But that was step one, just getting on board. Step two is bringing it to the studio. Step three is doing all the deals. And then, getting someone like Greta and Noah to write the script. After that, once they had the script in their hands, then it was, okay, now we have the movie that we're going to make. Now everyone needs to get on board with supporting this vision.
How did you persuade them that this path that you were on was the right way?
Again, step by step. Just, it's, okay, tell us.
I can tell you.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you just from, she does this thing, it's almost reflexive, but I know it now enough because I've seen it enough times. She'll say to people, whether it's Warner Brothers or Mattel, if we're having a meeting, you'll end it, or when we get towards the end, she'll say, and does anybody else have any problems or fears or things that they want to say to us, tell us now? Like you'll almost, like she almost, in a pathological way, you like run towards what is going to be the sticky point for people, and you try to extract it from them.
What was it? What was the sticky point?
I mean, there were millions. There were a million. It was like it was.
What was the one that was closest to, or being like not able to be resolved? You thought this could hold it up. This could really get in the way.
Well, luckily we made a crazy enough script that it was literally the whole thing.
Yeah. I was going to say, that almost worked in our favour, that the list of things to be scared of for them was so long that it wasn't one thing to focus on. I think if they had like 3 things to be scared of, we would have lost all 3 battles. But if you're fighting 100 battles at once,
you swear them down.
Actually, you just keep winning on inches and you keep moving forward. And again, it wasn't that we were trying to, discredit what they were worried about. It was just that it's like, okay, we need to hear you out. We understand that now. Let's keep moving forward with prepping this film whilst also talking about the thing that's scary. But at the same time, we have to keep prepping this film. And then everyone eventually gets a little, like desensitized to all those scary things. And
also I think the thing that we knew that like was also at the core of it was not just like vis-a-vis the brand but just the story and the characters was that like I knew and Margot knew and all the actors knew that what we wanted at the center of it was just a really big heart, and that part of it was so important for me, that however anarchic or crazy or throwing elbows the movie was, that the thing that you walk away with was this feeling of this heart in the middle of it. And I was like, well, I'm not lying to them. That's true.
Yeah.
And so that I can tell, I can look them in the eye and say, you might not love this or that, but I'm telling you, like, this movie has only love for people. Because it did.
And that's another hard thing. I think when you read something in text form, it's easier to assume the worst version of that. It's like if you read a text and someone didn't put any emojis in it, you're like, are they mad at me? I don't know. And like, if I got to voice note that to you, you could hear my voice and I'm saying it like I'm happy,
like this.
you know?
Yeah.
But like sometimes when you're reading a script, I think it's easy to be like, oh, this is all very...
Yes.
But we were like, none of this is going to feel mean-spirited. Like, we are poking fun at ourselves. Like, Mattel's a character and Mattel's going to poke fun at itself. Like, we're going to be self-aware, and that is the access point. But when we deliver that, it is going to be delivered from a place of love, and the overall feeling is to kind of deliver an uplifting experience.
So it's interesting that in the little that was able to be understood about the film in advance. Clearly, Mattel still talk about it in slightly different terms to you two, but somehow they don't like to call it a feminist film. The actors seem very comfortable with talking about it as a feminist film.
Yeah.
But somehow it doesn't matter that you talk about it differently.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, it most certainly is a feminist film. And I think that the sort of...
Can you explain that? Why? How so?
To me, it's like that's like one slice of the pie. Like, it's
pretty big.
It's a big slice, but like, I don't know.
I know.
I also wouldn't call it a funny film, because then that discredits the fact that it's got a lot of heart and it's got a lot of emotion and it's got a lot of like movie references, all this kind of stuff. I'm like, it is funny. That is a huge part of it. It's a comedy,
right?
But if you just call it a funny film, you almost make it sound like it doesn't have a lot going on, and it does.
Well, I mean, like, this is sort of, when we talk about this stuff, it almost sounds silly, because you start talking about Barbie and Ken, and then you're having very serious discussions about Barbie and Ken, but it's like, I mean, I think to whatever that sort of like, it's also a humanist film, because it's like the humanity, insofar as you can call it, of like Barbie and Ken is what's paramount in the film. And at the beginning of the movie, Ken is a person with no status in this world. So in this kind of reversed world, that person who has no status is in a completely untenable place long term.
Quite a brave decision too, to give Ken such a big character in the end, to take him away from being the cipher that he's always been into a real thing.
Right, which is, but that in that way, it's giving him, humanity, as it were, as a doll, as whatever these kind of knots on knots that we have of the world of Barbie. But yeah, I mean, I also think I will say just the existence of this film in the way that it does is pretty incredible, and is pretty, I mean, like, when I think of it, this sort of as it stands, I'm like, this is amazing that this movie is made, and it's made the way it is, with Margot as a producer and a star, and what the story is of the movie. It feels sort of unbelievable that it's been made, but I think it's feminist in a way that includes everyone. It's like it's a rising tide lifts all boats version of it.
Yeah, I think some people hear the word feminism means that doesn't mean men, and I'm like, well,
yeah, no, it does mean men.
Anyone who believes men and women should be equal is feminist.
It's that simple.
But I think some people hear the word feminist and like associate a lot of negative baggage with the word. And
so what is it for you in the film? If you think, if you guys are comfortable, there I go, look at me, if the actors, if all the people on set are comfortable, they get that the word belongs to the film. How so?
I think it belongs to the film because I think it's because when we were making it, the whole Barbie is like an icon that, as Margot was speaking to, that it's both. She exists in the both and, not the either or. She's not either good or bad, or, you know, is that diving into the complexity of it and not running away from it, but like looking at all the thorniness and stepping into it, and also looking at all the thorniness and stepping into what is the negotiation of what women need to be, and how to give them something other than a tightrope to walk on, is how it feels feminist to me.
I actually, when I got asked the other day, like, is Barbie a feminist? I was like, well, she's actually like the level up from that, because if you look at Barbie Land at the beginning, like the Barbies are on top and the Kens are kind of disregarded. So I was like, well, that's not equal.
No, right.
So
right.
whatever the opposite of misogynist is, actually Barbie's like. So towards the end, when they balance things out, then it might be feminist. But actually, it's like beyond feminist.
But then
the power dynamic is in the favor of the Barbies to begin with.
Exactly. But then, not to give too much away, but then like the human character of, I will say, Gloria, played by the brilliant America Ferrera, also articulates some stuff about what this negotiation is, and it. I think really what it feels is like allowing all the things to exist at once and not shoving things down because they don't fit with something.
You've spoken about this before, this sense of the American young girl. Brash, confident, maybe a little brash, but very confident, doing well, comfortable with her, her skin. And then adolescence comes along, and then there's this sense of not being enough, not being good enough. And there's a speech in the film that we hear in the promo section, what's to come, that mentions that. But I actually wanted to ask the two of you about that. Is that important in the film, that the teenage girl and that loss of confidence? And does that resonate with you as an Australian? Or is it an American thing?
What's interesting in the movie, or the way I see the movie, is that the character of the 13-year-old girl is actually, she doesn't really suffer from that. She's kind of like a Joan of Arc clarion call of like, I'm going to tell you what for. And that Barbie, in a way, actually takes on the feeling of shrinking inside of herself. Like, so that in this movie, it feels like that our teenage girl is like, has certainty, and then Barbie kind of shrinks. And I don't know if it's like specifically American. I mean, I remember the moment when I started.
No, I think it's pretty universal.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would guess it probably.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many things about it, but I always think of like my friends who have daughters who are, you know, they're like amazing, and so, you know, they put, like, I always think of Barbie as being related to the like little girls playing dress up, where they put on everything. They put on like the tutu and the tiara and the boa and the gloves and the bag and the cowboy boots, and they have sparkle. Like, they are just like, there's no real, like, it's like more. And that part of that like aesthetic, and part of that idea, so many ideas, like putting everything into it, like that was part of what I wanted out of Barbie. And then this moment where then they just start wanting to disappear. And I watched it happen with them, and I'm like, what is this changeover? And in any case, not to spoil too much, but when Barbie has this moment and then Gloria is able to speak to her, it just, I don't know, I think for me, I've seen this movie obviously more than anyone else on planet Earth, and I'm still touched by that ability for a woman to look at another woman and say, you're good enough.
Margot Robbie, we're incredibly proud that you're here doing this film, but for the whole world. It's an amazing cultural moment. Thank you both for talking about it and for starting what is going to be just a rip-roaring conversation around the globe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Thank you.
Thanks. I hope it's a rip-roaring conversation.